Hello, Rama Pupodu. Hi all, hope all are healthy, feeling very relaxed, peaceful, and happy. Now let's go to chapter 9, Pondicherry and Thiruvannamale. In due course, Tirupalivur was reached, and Ramdas was taken by the Sadhuram to the house of an old relation of his, where on the veranda the night was spent. Next morning, the Sadhuram advised Ramdas to go for alms to a few houses pointed out by him. "Look here, Maharaj," said the kind-hearted Sadhuram. "Money is wanted for your plantains and milk. Ordinary food can be easily procured, but for your food, money is needed." He conducted Ramdas to a street, both sides of which were studded by houses owned by vakils. "Go on from house to house. They might give you something. I shall wait for you at the other corner," instructed the Sadhuram. Ramdas, who was always at the bidding of his guide, did as directed by him, begging at the door of about half a dozen houses. Ramdas got altogether a handful of copper and other coins, which were all handed over to the Sadhuram, who found, on counting them, to be about 10 annas. "Your Ram is really kind," remarked the Sadhuram, smiling. "This sum will do for 2 days." In the course of the day, there was a talk about Pondicherry, which Ramdas came to know lay only at a distance of about 20 miles from Tirupalivur. A desire sprang up in the mind of Ramdas to visit the place for the darshan of Aurobindo Ghosi, the great Bengali saint. The wish was expressed to the Sadhuram, and he agreed to it at once. The following morning, early before sunrise, both started, of course, on foot, and went towards Pondicherry. At about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, the outskirts of the city of Pondicherry were reached. The peculiarity here was that the entrance to the city was studded on both sides, at a few yards from each other, with a number of toddy shops. On entering the city, inquiries were made for the home or ashram in which Saint Aurobindo Ghosh lived. After knocking about to and fro for some time, the gate of a palatial building was pointed at by a friend, wherein the sadhus were told the saint was residing. Entering, Ramdas inquired with 2 young Bengalis whom he met in one of the rooms at the entrance of the building, if Saint Aurobindo Ghosh can be seen, then. To this, one of them replied, "Sir, sorry, since Aurobindo Ghosh is in retirement, he does not give audience to anybody for a year to come." Ramdas then begged the favor of a mere sight of the great man, which would satisfy him. Even this favor could not be granted. It was all Ram's wish. So Ramdas came out and explained to the Sadhuram waiting outside the circumstances. While this was going on, a policeman was observed to be approaching the spot where the sadhus were standing. Coming up to them, the obsequious policeman said, "Friends, you are wanted at the police station. You have to follow me." At this, the Sadhuram was immensely frightened, and pulling Ramdas aside, whispered to him, saying that most probably the policeman was taking them over to be flogged. Ramdas suggested that they might accompany the police, and that the future be left in the hands of Ram. About half a mile's walk, and the police station was reached, and the sadhus found themselves standing in front of a tall man of middle age with fierce looks and a well-carved and twisted moustache. He spoke something sternly which could not be grasped, for he must have done so in French. A reply in English was given by Ramdas, and the man, who seemed to be a police inspector, simply stared in return to indicate that he did not understand what was spoken. Then a talk in Tamil ensued between him and the Sadhuram. The import of what the police inspector said was to the effect that only 2 hours were allowed for the sadhus to clear out of the city. At this, the Sadhuram seemed to have demonstrated, pleading that the travel of 20 miles at a stretch requires some rest for the tired pilgrims, and that they would prefer to remain in the city for the night and leave the place next morning. This reply did not merely not satisfy the inspector, but also appeared to have roused him a bit. Now he talked fast, his eyes glistening and his hands twisting his moustache furiously. The allowance of 2 hours was reduced to 1 hour, and if they did not obey it promptly, he warned they might have to pay for it. This time the words he spoke were freely spiced here and there with some finely selected epithets of abuse. The sadhu at once pressed Ramdas to swiftly move away from that place for very life. He was, poor man, both frightened and annoyed at the sharp words of the inspector. A few yards off the station, and the Sadhuram commenced to pour forth quite a shower of abuse on the inspector. No amount of persuasion on the part of Ramdas for peace would stop the brisk play of his tongue. He was assured it was all Ram's wish, and so there was no reason to grumble. Still, he continued to pour out quite a long string of choice epithets. He seemed to be quite a master in that line. For about a mile's walk, the Sadhuram's wrath did not cool down. Gradually, he was becoming silent, maybe either due to exhaustion of his stock of words or on account of an empty stomach. Or it might have been all a trick of Ram to test Ramdas if he would join him in the game set on foot by him. Ram alone knows, and he alone can judge. Retracing about 4 miles from the city of Pondicherry, the Sadhuram selected the veranda of a shop, which was shut, for taking rest for the night. The early morning following, they started on their return journey to Tirupalivur, which place they reached at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Hence, it should not be forgotten that the Sadhuram was looking after Ramdas so tenderly that he seemed a veritable foster mother to him. Again, it was all Ram's work, whose ways are at once loving and mysterious. Next day, the train carried both the sadhus to Thiruvannamale. Here, the Sadhuram conducted Ramdas to the house of a goldsmith with whom he was acquainted. The goldsmith was a pious man. He pressed both the sadhus to remain at his house as guests. For some days, Ramdas occupied a closed veranda in this friend's house for his meditation and rest. In the mornings and evenings, he, along with the Sadhuram, would go on visits to the huge temple of Mahadev. One day, the kind Sadhuram took Ramdas for the darshan of a famous saint of the place named Ramana Maharishi. His ashram was at the foot of Thiruvannamale mountains. It was a thatched shed. Both the visitors entered the ashram and, meeting the saint, fell prostrate at his holy feet. It was really a blessed place where that great man lived. He was young in age, but there was on his face a calmness, and in his large eyes a passionless look of tenderness, which inevitably cast a spell of peace and joy on all those who came to him. Ramdas was informed that the saint knew English, so Ramdas addressed him thus: Maharaj, here stands before thee a humble slave. Deign to have pity on him. His only prayer to thee is to give him thy blessing. The Maharishi, turning his beautiful eyes towards Ramdas and looking intently for a few minutes into the eyes of Ramdas, as though he was pouring into Ramdas his blessings through those orbs, shook his head to say that he had blessed. A thrill of inexpressible joy coursed through the frame of Ramdas, his whole body quivering like a leaf in the breeze. O Ram, what a love is thine! Bidding farewell to the Mahatma, the Sadhuram and Ramdas returned to the goldsmith's residence. That's all, folks. Let's see in the next chapter. Bye bye. Thank you. Rama Rama Puppodu.